Okay, let's record here for Ben. All right, there we go. Okay, so before we get started, does anyone have any questions or as we get started? Anything that they've seen, done, anything?
I have a question.
Sure.
So Ilhan Omar got reelected in the primary.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is she automatically going to win in November?
It's a good question. Okay, so there are certain districts, right? A congressperson represents a district. Okay, so there are certain districts that they are so overwhelmingly populated by one party, right? So that the Republican has zero chance of getting elected. Yeah. So that's the idea. So it would just be like I'm trying to think of like Boca Raton is another example, right? Boca Raton is like 80% Democrat. Almost all South Florida is like that. So, but it becomes something much worse, which
Could you get
is
a pet pig?
wait, hold on, what's going on? Okay, which becomes much worse, which is that um, you have something called gerrymandering. Anybody like in your social studies classes know what gerrymandering is? Yes, you've
I've
heard
heard of
it,
it, but I don't know
right?
what it is.
Okay, so gerrymandering is that the districts are set up in such a way. If you take out a map and look at like congressional districts in certain states, they're absurd. These maps, like if you look like Ted Deutsch's, I'd call it up. I'm just like too lazy to Google it now. But if you look at some of these districts, they're like they're just drawn like in the weirdest shape possible. Okay, they're like just all over the place, and the reason is because these members of Congress that have been in office for years lobby the state representatives that draw up the districts so that they'll be safe. So if you're a Democrat and all of a sudden they redo the lines and you were in a district that was 75% Democrat, and then all of a sudden you start finding yourself in a district that has, I don't know, like now you're 80% Republican, so you're not going to get elected again, right? When that happens, that's usually when a member of Congress retires because they realize it doesn't matter. It's not a fair race for them. It doesn't matter what they say. The people are going to go in and vote Republican or Democrat no matter what. So in Ilhan Omar's district, the district is overwhelmingly Democrat. So Republican has zero chance of winning. In Boca Raton, because that's what a lot of people here are familiar with. In Boca Raton, so the district is so Democrat that like the Republican Party won't give any money to the person running against Ted Deutsch because it's like a complete and total waste of money. 2 times ago. Now, what's interesting is that Ted Deutsch will only get between 60 and 70% of the vote, even when he's running against a nobody, because there are certain people that will only vote Republican, no matter what. It doesn't make a difference. So, like Ted Deutsch once had an opponent. A lot of times he runs, he doesn't even have an opponent, and he rarely produces campaign material. You'll never see signs like "Vote for Ted this November." There's just no point. He knows he's going to get reelected. There's no one serious running against him. So there was one. I'll tell a couple of stories. There's one guy ran against Ted Deutsch as a Republican, and the Sun Sentinel, which is like the newspaper in Florida, wouldn't even interview him. You're just like, you're a joke. We're not going to interview him. So he couldn't even get listed in like the newspaper. So what he did was he would go online to the articles about Ted Deutsch and leave comments, and then he would screenshot those comments and then put them up on his website and say, as I was quoted in the Sun Sentinel in response to Ted Deutsch, and you're like, no, you weren't quoted by the newspaper. You left a comment like any other schmagegi. That's the comment section. That's not the newspaper. Like that's not the article. You couldn't even get in the article. So that's like some of the stuff you had. But for those of you that are familiar with AOC, right? So she's a congresswoman from Queens. So she did something that was unreal. She ran against, again, Democratic district, not gonna, but the person she was running against was the #3 Democrat in the country. Okay, I'm just forgetting his name, but he was the #3 Democrat in the country. Rafi for sure knows his name. He was the number three Democrat in the country. He was in line to be Speaker of the House, and then he decided just not to campaign. So AOC went around, and in the primary, which he's always won, he was scheduled to have a debate with her, and in the end decided not to show up, and he sent a staff member. So AOC won the primary with like 900 votes. It was a tiny amount of people. Joe Crowley, thank you. Right, so she beat him with like very few people voting for her because the other guy got so lazy. Same thing this year. We lost one of the biggest pro-Israel Congress people ever. Eliot Engel lost his primary this year, and the reason why he lost, people will give you all different types of reasons why he lost, progressive versus an establishment Democrat. The reason why he lost is because he did not campaign. He moved out of his district to Maryland years ago because he'd been in Congress for 30 years, and he didn't like going back and forth to his district. So he bought himself a house in Maryland. He didn't even live in his district anymore. Okay. Now, by law, you're obligated to keep a residence there, but usually what you do is you just use your office as your residence. Okay, like you have but you don't actually sleep there ever. And he was so out of touch with the people in his district, he didn't campaign. And the other guy just campaigned. He just campaigned, and then when it came time, right, Eliot Engel got defeated because he did not campaign. So on the one hand, there's a lot of confidence that people have because they should have confidence, but that's why Brandon asked, just to go back to the beginning here, why Ilhan Omar, if she wins her primary, she's for sure going to win the election, is because if a district is 80% for one party, there's no chance that the candidate from the other party can win. It's just not going to happen. Certain people cannot vote for the other party. A Democrat, like a real Democrat, cannot get themselves to vote for a Republican, and a real Republican just can't get themselves to vote for a Democrat. I'll finish off with one interesting stat. In the 2012 Obama-Romney campaign, President Obama's re-election campaign, so Ted Deutsch won the district with 75% of the vote, and Romney won the district. Ted Deutsch is a Democrat. Romney was the Republican candidate. Romney won the vote by by a little amount. So, and Ted Deutsch was the only Democratic member of Congress to get elected in a district that voted for Romney. So how do you explain that? It's a statistical anomaly that doesn't make any sense unless you throw in one factor. Anybody want to guess the one factor?
Israel.
There you go. Israel was the one factor. People were so disgusted by President Obama on Israel, okay, that they voted for then Governor Romney over President Obama, today Senator Romney. But then, just to show, and so it was an amazing stat. It's the only time that's like really ever happened. And then, so that was it. I'll tell you something, like one more funny story because it's just funny. If for those of you from Florida, you know this, the I-95 runs, down the entire, like Florida, essentially, right? Just it's like a straight line straight down Florida. So President Obama came to visit South Florida. I don't remember when it was, but at one point he came to visit while he was president. It was during the campaign, though, so it must have been 2012. It might have actually been for the 2012 presidential debate, which was at, what's that college called? With an L? I don't know. The one in Boca. Might not be with an L.
FAU?
No, the other one. One word college. I forgot what it's called. In Boca. Maybe with an F? I don't know. Some Google universities in Boca. I think it's FRL, something like that. Anyway, so or just Google 2012 presidential debates Florida. You'll find it. So, in any case, when he was there, so he was driving down the 95, Lynn University. There it is. Thank you, Shami. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, Lynn University. So that's where the debate was. When he was driving down the I-95, three guys from Boca, three Jewish guys from Boca. Okay, now this cost about $100,000. Okay, they rented, and you had to rent it for the month. They rented 10 billboards on the I-95, each billboard with another message about why President Obama was so bad for Israel. a different billboard, every single one, with a different thing on it about why President Obama was so bad for Israel. I got a call, not kidding, from the presidential motorcade. Okay, now I won't repeat the words here because I'm a rabbi and I'm not supposed to say words like this, but it started off with beep, 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 billboard, beep, 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 billboard, beep, beep, beep. Okay, that was essentially the message that I got. And like, who in the world does this? I didn't even know about it. I went out to look at the billboards. I was like, that's the funniest thing I ever saw. So in any case, but that was pretty funny. But yeah, so there were some people that were really against President Obama. So that's especially in South Florida. Okay. Any other questions?
It also helps that Ted Deutsch's district has like 16% Jews and mostly pro-Israel. So. Right,
it's true, it's true. Another one is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, right? You cannot defeat Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You just can't. You're not going to be able to. It doesn't matter. 2 cycles ago, a Bernie Sanders guy went against her, a Democrat. He spent like $2 million. People really hated Debbie Wasserman Schultz at that point. It was right after the whole scandal with the Hillary campaign and everything. And a Bernie guy went against her, and he got demolished. And there's certain people that they're not going to get defeated. Doesn't matter. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's Kamala Harris's viewpoint on Israel now that she's the VP for Biden?
Oh, okay. So Kamala. So let me tell you a story. I posted this story on Facebook yesterday. I'll tell you a great story about Kamala Harris. Okay. This is this is incredible. For those that have been to policy conference with me, so you'll understand this thing. But for our group trip that goes to policy conference, we usually run on our own schedule. Okay, we don't go by the APAC schedule. Every once in a while, the youth division of APAC, what's called leadership development, the college and high school program, they decide to put on their own programming also at policy conference. They do like 2 or 3 programs. They're notoriously horrible programs. Okay, which is why if you come on my trip, we generally don't go to them. So one year, Adam Teitelbaum, who runs the entire thing, said to me, he goes, listen, I know you generally don't come to our programs, but this one's going to be really good. I can't tell you who's speaking. I'm not allowed to say who's speaking, but I'm telling you, you're going to love it. Everyone's invited. It's on the big stage. It's just students. Please do me a favor. Just trust me and come. Okay, fine. So we rearrange our schedule. We show up at the big room. We get in there, okay? And Kamala Harris, who had just been elected as the junior senator from California, replacing someone named Barbara Boxer, who was a horrible, evil woman, was speaking. And I was like, what? This is what you told me, it's so important for me to be here. And we canceled a lot of our schedule to hear Kamala Harris. Okay, give me a break. Okay, she's a senator. There's 100 senators. This is not, And then so I had everybody sit down, and I'm debating with Geller whether we should pull everybody out or not. And and I'm like, it's just so stupid. I can't believe I fell for this. It's so dumb. And then I started listening to her, and I started looking around the room. Okay, there's 2,500 college and high school students, and I'm looking, and she had the room. There's certain speakers, they've got you. Okay, she wasn't giving a speech. She was being interviewed. Okay, if you look at my Facebook, you can see there's a picture of it. And she's being interviewed, and it was off the record talk. No one knew she was coming to this policy conference. No one knew that she was speaking. It was an off-the-record talk, and you could tell there's certain things they call it. If you're Sephardi on this call, you might not understand the word, but I'll translate it. It's you have Israel in your kishkas, okay? In your intestines, so you just got Israel in there, okay? So when they talk about candidates, whether or not kishka is a Yiddish word, so whether they talk about candidates, whether or not candidates are really pro-Israel or not, what they always ask is the candidate, do they have Israel in their kishkas? That's the question. Not is it a position paper that they wrote, but do they really, really care about Israel? Kamala Harris, I'm telling you, whether you agree with her positions or not, she cares about Israel. It's in her kishkas, okay? Joe Biden, it's in his kishkas, okay? Mike Pence, it's in every cell of his body, not just his kishkas, okay? Mike Pence would gladly give up fingers, toes, limbs of his body to make sure Israel was safe, okay? I don't think Donald Trump has, and it's just my personal opinion, I think there's very few things that he has in his kishkas, okay? I just think that's not him. I don't think he cares that much about certain things. So it's not does he care about Israel? Does he not care about Israel? But there are certain people, like Nikki Haley, right? In their kishkas, they care about Israel, okay? So Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they care about Israel. Now, that goes so far. Now comes the question of what are their positions on Israel? That's the question. So one of the things that we're going to be doing this year is in our group, which I'm going to introduce in September, is I have a chart of 18 positions on Israel that are important, in my opinion. Iran's nuclear deal, whether we should get back into negotiating with Iran, how do we handle Iran's ballistic missile program? Do you agree to extending sovereignty? Do you think that settlements are a good idea? Should we negotiate with the Palestinians? All different, 18 different hot button items that we should think about when it comes to the presidential campaign. And I'm going to ask you guys to do the research and compare and contrast President Trump and Vice President Biden and see their positions. Because people always ask the question, and Don, I don't remember how you phrased it, and it doesn't really matter, but people always, people always phrase the question of, are they pro-Israel, right? And that shouldn't be the question that we're asking. We should ask, what are their positions on Israel, right? That's what our question should be. What are their positions on Israel? And then you should, before you look at their positions, you should sit down and write out, what do you want the positions to be? And then it's very simple. Then you could match up who holds by my positions, okay? That's the idea, okay? So, for instance, Vice President Biden, 100% voting record on Israel, okay? 100% in the Senate, pro-Israel voting record. Now, then you look at the Obama administration and say, well, there's a lot of stuff that happened during that time. Maybe that wasn't so positive for Israel. Also, a lot of stuff that happened that was positive for Israel. Kamala Harris, 100% voting record on Israel. The only thing that's questionable with Kamala Harris is there's a BDS resolution that went out whether or not the federal government should impose penalties on BDS companies, like companies that participate in BDS boycotts, and she didn't vote for it because she claimed First Amendment issues that would be limiting on people's First Amendment. There are very pro-Israel members of Congress who took that same position, including recently deceased John Lewis, also voted that way, and he's very pro-Israel. So Kamala Harris has a very strong record on Israel in terms of what we'd want her to do. She's visited Israel a number of times. She's voted pro-Israel a number of times, right? So those are the things. Now, the question is, what we have to ask is not what they've done in the past as much as what are they proposing to do in the future? That's the question. What do you think they should do? And are they going to do it? And then you have to ask the question that you're never going to be completely satisfied. You have to ask, what's the better of the two places where I want them to be? That's the question. Everybody understand? Okay. So, yes, and Ellie says, fun facts, Camilla's husband is Jewish. So it's not only is it a fun fact, it's relevant. I don't care if somebody's Jewish because some of this is going to sound horrible. Some of Israel's worst enemies are Jewish. Bernie Sanders is Jewish. I got to imagine none of us want Bernie Sanders to be the president of the United States for Israel's sake. But he would be the first Jewish president, right? What'd you say, Don?
Chas v'shalom.
Okay, great. So, right? But he's Jewish, so being Jewish...
We take Bloomberg, though.
What? Mike Bloomberg. Mike Bloomberg is a guy that has Israel in his kishkas, okay? He's a guy that has Israel in his kishkas. He's not going anywhere. But that's, right, that would have been, right? But no one wants Bernie Sanders to be president. So the fact that she's married to a Jew, right? Forget about, like, intermarriage, like, and how big a problem that is. But, like, setting that aside, how this shouldn't be a point of pride for us. This should be a point of disappointment for us. But in any case, that's the, right, that's yes, true. But I'm not so sure I would count that as meaning too much until I knew how much her husband cared about Israel, right? Because if her husband doesn't care about Israel, the fact that he's Jewish doesn't mean too much to me, right? As just from Israel's sake, I would much rather her be married to an evangelical Christian who cares a lot about Israel than a Jew who doesn't care about Israel. I don't know the first thing about her husband, so I don't know. But like, I'd rather her be married to Mike Pence than the Jews for Palestine. Like that's you know what I'm saying? That's the guy I'd rather. So that's the idea. Okay, I want to look at the chats because some people are throwing in questions here. What has Joe Biden Kamala Harris or Mike Pence done or said that shows pro-Israel in their kishkas? Yeah, okay. So let's take Vice President Biden. Good question, Brandon. Vice President Biden, 100% voting record on Israel. Okay. Statements. He's been in the Senate for something close to 30-something years. He's been in government for 50 years, if you count his 8 years as vice president, which you should. And always, he's been friends with every prime minister. And he's like every statement is pro-Israel. Okay, like incredibly pro-Israel. Now, again, there might be things that he's done and said that your version of pro-Israel you might disagree with, right? So I'll give you a perfect example, okay? And if those of you that can have your cameras on, I'd much prefer it with cameras on, just because it's easier to talk to people than a box. If not, then it's fine. But the question is like this: when it comes to, I'll give a perfect like middle ground issue here, okay? Settlements, okay? Settlements. I live in a settlement. Now, right? I personally think that if you're going to be pro-Israel, you should be pro-settlements. Now, I have many friends, including family members, very close family members, who are anti-settlements. That does not mean they're not pro-Israel. As much as I'd love to say, you're anti-Israel if you're anti-me, it's just not true. If they are coming at settlements and saying, we think it's either morally wrong or we think that it's strategically wrong for Israel's safety and security, right, to have Jews in settlements, and we think it's better for Israel's safety to pull out of settlements, then they're still pro-Israel. But I disagree with them about how they're doing that, okay? So the next question you have to ask yourself is, if it matters to you, is what do you consider pro-Israel? Where are your lines, right? That's why I don't like using the phrase pro-Israel anymore, because it doesn't mean anything.
So does anyone consider the Iran deal to be pro-Israel if that was under the Biden-Obama campaign?
Yeah, many people who are pro-Israel consider participation in the Iran deal because they felt the Iran deal was the best option available, right? President Obama.
Cory Booker really led.
What?
Cory Booker really led the pro-Israel, pro-Iran deal kind of.
I would say not Cory Booker. I would say President Obama did, right? If you're going to say, like, the question is how you define pro-Israel. But if you say pro-Israel, somebody that wants Israel to be safe and secure, President Obama didn't wake up in the morning and go to the Oval Office and be like, hey guys, how can we undermine Israel's security? Let's see how we could do this over the course of the next 8 years, right? He wanted, when these people like talk about the fact that they want peace because peace means to them safety and security for Israel. That's what peace would bring. Now you might say, well, you're living in a dream world. It'll never happen this way. Okay, fine. That's a legitimate disagreement. People that are anti-Israel are people like Ilhan Omar, who say that they don't believe, right, that Israel has a right to exist as it currently does as a Jewish state. That's anti-Israel in my mind. Okay. Now I would change your language. Instead of saying somebody is pro-Israel or anti-Israel, I would ask, which candidate is going to be helpful towards Israel's future? Much better. Then I could say, Joe, let's take for example, okay, I'm going to go counterintuitive here, okay, but I would say, I think that Donald Trump is not good for Israel's safety and security, because by shutting the Palestinians completely out, he just exasperates the situation and makes it much worse. So do I appreciate having the embassy in Jerusalem? 100%. Do I appreciate that he recognized the Golan? 100%. The other 50 things they did for Israel, very good. But overall, the approach is making Israel very, very unsafe. That's a position you could take. Okay, that's a pro-Israel position, and somebody can come along and say, listen, since America pulled out of the Iran deal, Iran has been openly developing nuclear weapons to the extent where it seems that Israel had to attack Iran. For 3 weeks this summer, every day something else related to Iran's nuclear program was blowing up in massive, huge explosions, some of them close to the size of the Beirut explosion, okay? That was going on. That was happening all the time. Why did someone was bombing them. Why did someone feel the need to bomb Iran? Because Iran was quickening their nuclear program. Why were they quickening their nuclear weapons program because America pulled out of the deal and Iran didn't have to keep to the deal. So there's an argument to be made either way. Did everybody understand? Okay. Now, for most of us, and I'll take your question 1 second, Adaya. For most people in the pro-Israel community, okay, and again, this group, okay, I don't share my personal political opinions, but when we do follow AIPAC's positions, okay, that's the line. So when AIPAC came out against the Iran deal, so our group came out against the Iran deal, and we've been against the Iran deal ever since. That's the idea, okay? So that's where we go. But everything else that AIPAC doesn't take a position on, I won't teach you one position over the other, okay? Got it? So I'm not gonna go. I just want to finish, and let me just finish this one question, and then I'll go back to you because we're in the middle here. So what has Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or Mike Pence done? So Joe Biden, complete voting record. Kamala Harris, complete voting record, and Mike Pence, voting record when he was in Congress in Indiana, and of course for the last 3.5 years in the Trump administration, right? They have done many, many pro-Israel things. Okay, so those are things. The question is, when you say, what do you judge someone on? You can only judge an elected official on 3 different things: their statements, their voting record, right, and their promises for the future. What else are you going to vote on? You know, people like, you read my Facebook, some people have been leaving the most idiotic comments. You know, Kamala Harris is friends with Ilhan Omar. What do you talk? Why do you think that's even true? Like, they've never spent like an ounce of time together. They're friends. She defended her. So like, why did she defend her? So after Ilhan Omar's anti-Semitic comments, she received death threats. And Kamala Harris said that no member of Congress should be getting death threats for their comments. But I do think that Ilhan Omar's comments were anti-Semitic. So the headline of the article is, Kamala Harris comes out and defends Ilhan Omar. No, she criticized the anti-Semitic comments. She just thought that she shouldn't be killed for it by somebody out on the street. That's okay. I'm also defend Ilhan Omar in that sense. You know, like, yeah, I also don't think that somebody should shoot her in the middle of the street. Yes, so I'm also a defender. That's ridiculous. Odaya, go ahead.
Thanks. Once Iran finishes building the nuclear bomb, are they actually planning on using it against Israel or against other countries, or what's the plan with that?
Well, we're hoping that they don't get to that point. Let's start there. Okay, so, right, no country that has planned a nuclear weapon against Israel has gone to the point of completion. Iraq in 1981 tried, Israel bombed. Syria in 2007 tried, Israel bombed their place. It seems like that's what happened. I'm assuming 6 years from now, we'll read a book by Yaakov Katz about Israel's strike on Iran over the last 3 weeks. Okay, I'm sure he's writing it right now and doing the interviews right now about it, but people can't talk about it for a couple of years. Okay, so hopefully we'll never get to that point. If Iran, this was supposed to be the point of the whole class last week. If Iran does develop a nuclear weapons program, and this is, if you haven't been paying so much attention, it looks like people are paying attention, but if you haven't been paying, this is where you really want to pay attention, okay? And I would even suggest maybe writing this down, as crazy as that sounds, okay? But just so you have this down pat, because this is an amazing thing. Iran can do 3 things with its nuclear weapons, with a nuclear weapon. Number 1, it can use it. It can simply blow up Israel, okay? So it can blow up. It can just send the bomb over. Now it has to be able to get it here. So it either has to have a ballistic missile that can get here without being shot down. Okay, it can, first of all, can reach. Like North Korea has nuclear weapons, but they can't get it anywhere. So North Korea always has these laughable laughable missile tests where they fire missiles at Hawaii. Okay, and miss Hawaii. Like you and I can throw a tennis ball from our homes and get closer to Hawaii than North Korea can with one of their missiles. Okay, they're like unbelievably inaccurate, and a lot of them just like fizzle out about a mile or 2 outside the shores of North Korea. Okay, even though they're supposed to travel something like 5,000 miles, so they can't get it anywhere. Okay, but you can also just stick it in a suitcase and fly it over, drive it through the Middle East, and get it over to Jordan, blow it up in Jordan, and you'll hit Yerushalayim. Okay, so that's something you could do, or bring it through, sneak it through the Lebanese border and get it down. So these things are incredibly small and very, very powerful. So that's number 1. That's the first thing. So they could just use it on Israel. That would be a big problem. That would be the end of Israel. Okay, and we're talking about the end of Israel for about 20 years, right? You couldn't live in Israel. The radioactive material would make it impossible to live here for about 20 years. Okay, so that would be a big problem. Okay. And the fact that Arabs would die also does not matter to them whatsoever. It's well worth the sacrifice. Okay, so that's and the fact that Israel would hit back also doesn't matter. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, they can use it to blackmail Israel. What do I mean by that? Imagine imagine Iran has a nuclear weapon, and Hezbollah and Hamas start firing rockets simultaneously into Israel. Okay, and Iran announces that if Israel bombs Gaza and Lebanon unfairly, because it's not fair that they bomb Lebanon and Gaza, there are innocent people living there. So if they do that, Iran is going to have to feel that it needs to come to the defense of the innocent people of Gaza and Lebanon and bomb Israel. Okay, and therefore, they're going to have to do so in such a mighty force to deter Israel from ever doing this again. So they're going to have to use a nuclear weapon. So now, imagine you're the Israeli prime minister. 80 rockets fell in the envelope around Gaza. Okay, Sderot and Ashkelon and Ashdod and the Netivot all start getting hit by rockets. Hezbollah starts launching another 80 rockets from the north, and Kiryat Shmona is getting hit by rockets. Okay, and now you want to stop the rocket fire, but if you do, you risk a nuclear war. So if you hit back, you could see the end of Israel. If you don't hit back, then you're forever going to be rocketed by Hamas, and no one will ever be able to live in Israel again because you'll just be living in bomb shelters. It'll make Corona look like nothing, right? So that's the second problem. Okay, is that Iran could just use it simply to blackmail, okay, and put everybody in an impossible situation. The third thing Iran could do is, which is probably the biggest risk, is they could what's it called? They could hand it over to one of their terrorist proxies. So they could give a nuclear weapon to Hezbollah, and then Hezbollah, which would obviously have no problem detonating a nuclear bomb in Israel because they're not a state, so they don't really have to worry about anything. Hezbollah blows it up, and Iran says it wasn't us. Because Hezbollah used it. How did they get a nuclear weapon? They bought it off some Russian website. You know, who knows? Yeah, so that's so that would be another. Those are the three things that we're worried about that Iran could do with a nuclear weapon. Okay, got it? Okay, fun times. Okay, let's go back to the questions here. Unless somebody has a question on that, a follow up on Iran and their nuclear weapons. Everyone got that? You enjoyed that? Okay, fine. Okay. Shlomi, you're right. Kamala Harris's positions are pretty weak on Israel. Why do you think that? Wait, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. You turn your mic on, but I don't think your headphones are on. That's my guess. I could be wrong. Still no. Something's. No, there we go. No, you just did it. But now you turn your mic off again. Put your mic back on. Now, good. But now we still can't hear you.
Oh, I'm not talking.
Yes. Now we got you. Go ahead. Go.
So I looked up Kamala Harris, Israel. I saw some of the headlines. I was like, oh, that doesn't look great. And I always have an instant gut reaction when I hear her name to have a vehement dislike. So maybe the headlines that I saw, it may have been poorly written, and then my perceived bias was just anti-her.
Yeah.
So I could be wrong there.
Yeah, that's what I would say. First of all, never ever try. First of all, does anybody know how a headline is written? Anyone know the process of how headlines are written? I didn't know this either until I started seeing my articles come out with bad headlines. Rafi, what do you think? How does it work?
Whatever they can use to have the most people click on the article.
Correct. Okay, and it's not the writer doesn't choose the headline. You throw in a headline, and then the editors change it to get people to click on it. So let me ask you a question. You ready? Kamala Harris says that Ilhan Omar should not be killed, right? Or Kamala Harris defends Ilhan Omar. Which gets more clicks? Right? Kamala Harris defends Ilhan Omar. How could you? She made an anti-Semitic comment, right? Okay, so the headline gets switched now. And it doesn't say that in the article, but that becomes the new headline, right? So that's how things work. Okay, there's times that I've been infuriated by the headlines chosen. Every writer has seen that their headline has been changed, and they're like, "What in the world? It's not what I said. I literally wrote the opposite. It says the opposite in the article. How could you put that headline in?" Well, you get some more clicks. That's how we make money. Okay, that's the way the game's played. So never, ever, ever trust headlines. Then when you read the articles, don't trust what you read. Research it and verify it. That's one person's take on it. Okay? There are reporters that don't report. They just write opinion pieces. Okay? And they play it off as we're reporting the news. No, it's not the news. It's their perspective on the news. So always look at a left-wing paper's perspective on an event, a right-wing's perspective on an event, right? Look at different perspectives, and then you can decide, okay, you know what? This is probably what's true. Or ask somebody that knows better, look, I read this, I read that, something's not kosher here, I don't understand, it's not straight. Can you please explain it, right? And then, okay, then you get to understand it, and that's how it works, okay? So never ever trust headlines. They're designed to make you click. That's the whole thing. So, and also keep in mind that nowadays you have another problem, okay? I would love to do this, and nobody would believe me, okay? But I would love to put up a candidate, like a Republican candidate for Congress, a fake Republican candidate for Congress, and use Kamala Harris's positions as that member of Congress's Republican positions and that Republican member's voting record. I'd love to put that up and then ask Republicans, do you think that this Republican congressional candidate is pro-Israel? And they're like, oh yeah, look at their quote, that's no problem. And then be like, surprise, it's Democratic Vice President nominee Kamala Harris. It's really the person. You're pro Kamala Harris. And I would love to do the opposite. I love to take Donald Trump quotes, okay, and read them off and say, this is Kamala Harris said the following statements. And I'd be like, do you agree? Be like, yeah, of course I agree. Be like, it's Donald Trump. Trump said it. Yeah, you love Trump. You're a Trump lover. You know, and I'd love to do that. And then you see, like, they do this stuff like there's a couple of reporters that do this all the time. They go out on the street and they read like fake quotes from people or real quotes from other people and claim it's somebody else. And you see people like, oh yeah, you should definitely do that, you know? And then you're like, see that? That's like, that's, you know, and people aren't honest. People are not honest, you know, like they just like automatically, oh, they're a Democrat, then they're bad. Oh, they're a Republican, they're bad, right? And then be like, no, it's not how life works. Examine the person's record and see. I can almost guarantee you, except for Kamala Harris's position on the Iran deal, okay? If you took all her positions and all her quotes on Israel and told people Mike Pence said it, they would believe you. 100% believe you. Rafi?
Yeah. Do you, first of all, if Biden-Harris wins, do you think that Susan Rice will have a position in the administration, and how dangerous to the security of Israel and really the United States would her being in a position be?
So Susan Rice was President Obama's his national security advisor, and then ambassador to the United Nations. Okay, and she was an absolute disaster for Israel. When you talk about like certain people have Israel on their kishkas, she won't allow Israel in the room. Okay, she is unbelievably resentful towards Israel. Her and somebody else in the Obama administration named Ben Rhodes, two advisors who the pro-Israel community is doing everything possible to make sure that they do not get positions in a Biden administration if he wins. I think Rafi, your father, said that he's spending, I think on one of my Facebook comments, he wrote that he's spending most of his time making sure Ben Rhodes never sees the outside of the White House, let alone the inside. Okay, so I think that was something that your father wrote publicly.
Yeah, I think my dad than any other person on the face of the planet, so that would make sense.
Right, yeah. These are two despicable people. Not Rafi's father, I mean Ben Rhodes and Susan Rice. So Susan Rice, though, was one of the people that supposedly Vice President Biden was considering as his running partner, as his vice presidential, where she has all the qualifications. She's an African-American woman. And that's what qualifies you in the Biden administration, evidently. So that's like, that's what she saw, and she's a national security expert, even though I think she's horrible. So that's the thing. So hopefully she would not have a position in the Biden administration. Keep in mind, as much as Kamala Harris's name is on the ticket, the vice president is one person, and in most administrations, not the strongest voice advising the president. Okay, nobody has said what type of role. Certain vice presidents are very, very close to the president and one of their biggest advisors. Okay, Dick Cheney and George Bush, incredibly close. Joe Biden and President Obama, incredibly close. Okay, certain vice presidents, Dan Quayle and George Bush Sr., they maybe saw each other every once in a while, not close at all. Okay, Lyndon Johnson and John F. Kennedy hated each other, and John Kennedy would have meetings and not tell Lyndon Johnson about them. Okay, Lyndon Johnson would be seeing everybody going into the Oval Office, be like, "What's going on?" And they'd be like, "Nothing," and then like walk by and not tell him. They'd be like, "I'm the vice president. How am I not being allowed in these meetings?" And then he got last laughs because he became president, right? So that was there's like books written about this stuff. So the vice president, as much as everyone's going to be paying attention to Kamala Harris, I would be much more concerned about who's going to be on staff in these places. That was a big concern in the Trump administration in the very beginning, who he was choosing as his advisors, who's really advising President Trump, who's in the room with him. So that's why John Bolton wasn't allowed in the room with him, because John Bolton's whole approach was bomb everything. John Bolton felt that we should, and still feels, that America should be bombing North Korea, Iran, all on the same day, all with the same amount of nuclear weapons, and getting done with all the problems in the world. Okay, that's John Bolton's opinion. So John Bolton wasn't allowed in the White House because President Trump is very anti-war. Okay, so that's the idea. Ellie, I just see you have a follow-up on this. What has Susan Rice done that she's considered not good for Israel? So if you look at the comments, it's not that she's done so much, because she was never an elected official. She was never elected. She's an advisor. But if you look at the positions that she's advised on, the positions that she's taken as it comes to Israel, they're horrible. And those are easy. You can just Google like what she said about Israel, what she's done about Israel. And behind the scenes, she was one of the people in the last resolution. There's a lot of stuff coming out about the Obama administration, especially in the last couple of months, that they did was really bad to Israel, and what they tried to do, which is even worse. So that's and she was behind a lot of that stuff. Okay, so that's so she would be a real danger. Okay, going back to questions here. How do you feel about Val Demings on Israel? I don't know so much about Val Demings on Israel. I don't know. You have to see her record. She's a congresswoman out of Orlando. She was also supposedly one of the people considered for Vice President Biden's vice president, but that didn't work. Okay. What's the voting record? That's Rebecca. That's your question. What is a voting record?
Yeah, but it got answered. Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, set of scores. Well, it's not so much a set of scores. It's how they voted, right? You want to see there's bills that go into Congress, there's resolutions that go into Congress, and then people have to vote on them. So that's how you can see how they voted. So what we're looking for are people that when they were in Congress and the Senate, they have a 100% pro-Israel voting record, right? That's what we want. We want people to be 100% pro-Israel voting record. So that's that you want, and you don't want to have people that do one of two things. Obviously, you don't want anybody that votes against Israel, but very few people do that. There are only about 17 members of Congress that vote against pro-Israel bills and resolutions. Okay, and not all of them even. Like the last bill for Israel was on Iran, and Ilhan Omar voted in a pro-Israel position. Okay, so like so you're not. But you have about 17 votes right now in Congress that go. And we're talking about 17 out of 435 people. So that's a very, very small percentage. Okay, very, very, very few people. And in the Senate, depending on the issue, you're not going to have more than 9 or 10 people. Okay, so but again, depending on the issue. So that's the voting record. And then you can see a member of Congress can say whatever they want, but what really matters is how they vote. When push comes to shove, how they vote, and then even more than how they voted. Okay, more than how they voted is if they co-sponsor a bill. Okay, so we're going to go back to like 6th grade social studies here. when a bill is written, you want to get the bill has to be sponsored by a member of Congress who puts the bill in. But that member of Congress can get co-sponsors. Okay, that means that they can go to other people in Congress and say, hey, can you also sponsor this with me? The more co-sponsors you have, the better chance the bill's going to, number one, be called for a vote, because a lot of bills never get called for a vote, and number two, pass. Because if you co-sponsor the bill, it's very rare that you'll co-sponsor a bill and then not vote for it. So when we write a bill that's pro-Israel, and when AIPAC works on a bill that's pro-Israel, what they try to do is get the bill obviously up there for a vote, but they try, before it even goes for a vote, they try getting about 300 to 400, it's usually closer to 300, co-sponsors on the bill. Because then the Speaker of the House looks at that and says, this bill has 300 co-sponsors, we got to put this up for a vote already. Everybody wants to vote for this. Everybody's in favor of this. They co-sponsor, let's go. And then the member of Congress owns it. Not just they voted for it, but they sponsored it. So that's their bill. Okay, by the way, anybody know who the co-sponsor on the Senate bill against the Obama resolution in the United Nations against Israel and settlements? In other words, the Obama administration abstained from a vote at the United Nations that said that Israel was doing something illegal by being in the settlements, and the United States Senate got together and put together a resolution criticizing the Obama administration. Anyone know a co-sponsor on that Senate bill? Anyone want to give a guess? The year would be 2017, end of 2016, beginning of 2017. Actually, sorry, it's beginning of 2017. And I want to guess a co-sponsor for the bill criticizing Democratic President Obama for abstaining on a UN vote. Anyone want to guess? There's a lot of co-sponsors, so it's very hard to get this question wrong. But one senator, I'll give it a hint. We have been talking about it. What?
Kamala Harris?
Kamala Harris is correct. That's right. Okay, so Kamala Harris co-sponsored a bill, a resolution in the Senate criticizing her party's president, President Obama, in his last couple weeks of office for going against Israel in the United Nations. Okay, so that's pretty impressive. Okay, got it? Okay. PragerU does stuff like that, and it's really funny. Yes, PragerU does it. There's a guy named Avi Friedman, maybe? Avi Horowitz. Young guy, Ami Horowitz.
Ami, yeah.
Ami Horowitz, fun guy, funny guy, does great stuff. He has an amazing video about Palestinian territories, taking a Palestinian cab all over the place. He does crazy things, like very, very dangerous things. He puts himself in very dangerous. He just went into Portland in the middle of the riots. He's like insane, but he does these hilarious videos where like he tries to show how stupid people are. And that's the idea. Okay. Any other questions here? Okay, so let's talk about next. Let's spend a couple minutes talking about it. Rebecca, you have a question? You just putting your camera back on.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. No.
Oh no, I was just going to look up his videos. That's why my camera was on.
Okay. No problem. You can definitely look him up. They'll give you hours and hours of entertainment. Okay. So what we're going to do next year? Anybody here? Brandon, you're a graduating senior, right? Okay, but nobody else is, right? Rebecca, are you? No, are you? No? Great, okay, good, perfect. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do next year. We're gonna continue having these meetings. They're gonna go back, unfortunately, to Monday night at 11 p.m. Israel time. Unfortunate for me, not so much unfortunate for you. Well, for Hodaya and Rafi, unfortunate, although the two of you, I think, sleep just as little as I do. So we're gonna go back to that time. We're gonna take like a 3-week break, and then we're gonna go back to that time. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have to come up with things to actually do this year. Shlomi is the chairperson of the Israel committee. I don't know what the position is called, the board position. I don't know how to why it works. I really should know this stuff before I start talking about it. But Shlomi's in charge, basically. Okay, so but we're going to have to think of things to do because there's no policy conference, there is no trips, and there's very little lobbying. Because I imagine if we can't go to school, then we can't go to a congressional person's office. I imagine parents will get very angry at me if I start sending their children places. So I'm thinking, Shlomi had the suggestion is that we start doing Zoom lobbying things, which I think might actually be more appealing if we could do that. But what we need to do is we need to get a solid group of people together. And maybe what we could do is every other week, every 3 weeks, get a member of Congress or their staff to come on for, let's say, just like 20 minutes of our class time, and we ask them questions and lobby for things. I think that would be pretty cool. And then what I want to do is I want to come up with that chart. I want to do that chart together of issues that in the presidential campaign. I think it would be really cool if we would publish something online, going through their positions, right? Like where you could look up and compare and contrast their positions. And if people came to our website to see the different positions on it, I think that would be pretty awesome if we could do that. So, and I think that's very little. It's 18 issues times 2, right? So you're talking about like, because there's 18 positions, 2 people. So you talk about like 36 points of information, let's say a paragraph, 2 paragraphs long. That's really not that hard, especially since all of you are going to be in school for about half the amount of time you usually do, because God forbid teenagers who spend all day long at a screen should actually spend all day looking at a screen for class time. That's the logic. Never really understood it. But in any case, that's the idea. Yeah, Rafi thinks he's going to school, and Hodiah thinks they're going to school because the Sarachino still says that they're going to school. Okay, you're not going to school. Okay, so that's the story. Okay, so we'll start in a couple of weeks again. Everybody here, I hope you're on that WhatsApp group that I send videos, because I'll keep sending videos. If you're not, then send me a message and I'll put you in that WhatsApp group, because I'll hopefully keep doing the videos.
Wait, is it the one that you post a link on? Because I don't see videos.
No, not in that. And there's a different WhatsApp group. Hold on, you know what?
No.
Hold on, I'm gonna put it in the chat right now. Hold on 1 second. You cannot minimize Zoom when you're recording the meeting. Oh shoot. Okay, hold on.
There's the Israel one and then the Torah one.
There's Israel one and Torah one. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I will hold on. I'll do it right now. I'm gonna do the Israel one. Hold on. Where is it? Israel. Here we go. And invite to group via link, copy link. Okay, and I'm gonna put this in the IPA group. And CSY IPA, here we go. Okay, it is now there. So you can click on that link there and join the group. Okay, folks, enjoy your last couple weeks before school starts again.
Thank you.
Okay, and you have to go back to your living rooms and sit exactly where you're sitting right now for class. Okay, see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.